country, because the issue of public assets and the issue about our economy must be our collective responsibility to make sure that everything that is done around those issues is done to the best interest of all of us as Kenyans. And some of these issues, I have to agree, they are not usually very juicy politically, but they are very, very far-reaching issues that we keep talking about. I've been talking about the issue of Safaricom Stake sale, and it's the same issue that I am addressing today. And it has been a topic for the last 8 months, but it still is a very important matter that we must interrogate as a country. When this issue came up, of course, many Kenyans gave their views, and many of us, including myself, I attended all the relevant areas that I ought to have attended, the committees, and I gave my views, considered views, in regards to how Kenya should get the best value for money in regards to the sale of Safaricom shares to Vodacom, and of course the other associated company, Vodafone. It is important for Kenyans to know that the government actually accepted the money, and money changed hands last week on 30th of June, despite even having an active appeal in our judicial system, that the government still went ahead in a half and in a hurry to make sure that the transaction was closed. And even after that, it is important for all of us to know that it is very apparent that there has been a lid placed on the Safaricom share price for the last 8 months as the transaction has been ongoing. And the more the reason, when we had a very bullish market in our NSC, where many of the shares have been going up across many counters and sectors, we saw that Safaricom share price was clearly being manipulated to not go past 34 Kenya shillings up until the government, or up until the money changed hands and the government received its dues. However, as we all know, and we have seen, the markets have already betrayed the government incompetence. We kept on saying that the amount of money Kenya is receiving for the sale of Safaricom share stake sale was overwhelmingly low. And clearly, even the markets have spoken very loudly, because it's no coincidence that after the closure of that transaction last week, just days after that, now Safaricom share price is trading way above the 34 Kenya shillings, even touching Kenya shillings 36 yesterday and even today. And of course, with the clear trajectory of an upward trend. It is clear that the transaction price that the government put on the table was underwhelming and disadvantageous to Kenyans. And that is why we must provoke all the tools available to make sure that that transaction is annulled. The more the reason that even the government went ahead, when there was even an active judicial system, they still went ahead to transact and make the money change hands. We have had other transactions happening in our market, because the incompetence of the government many times is to come up with rejoinders about how markets behave and other such stories. There is a transaction currently happening around a bank called NCBA, the sale of NCBA to Nedbank of South Africa. Whereas the transaction price is 105, the price has remained around 88 shillings in our market, including today, showing that even the explanations that the government would want to purport to give cannot suffice, because they may want to argue that after the transaction closure, we should see any such kind of a movement of share price. Far from it. EAPL has been having a transaction through Asahi of Japan, whereas the transaction price is 590. the share price in the market has been just around 258 or thereabout, clearly showing, as many Kenyans have been suggesting, that Kenya ought to have gotten better value in an off-the-market transaction of selling Safaricom Stake off the market. And it is clear that we actually purported to sell Safaricom shares at a discount, because we are actually receiving money lower than the market price in the market. That the amount of money Kenyans are buying Safaricom shares at in the market is now higher than we are selling foreigners and we are selling other shareholders in an off-the-market transaction. This must be corrected. And in this same breath, I want to ask, and I'll be writing to the Nairobi Securities Exchange and the Capital Markets Authority. They must investigate all the trades that have been happening for the last 8 months in the counter of Safaricom. Because it is very clear there has been price manipulation, there has been price suppression, pending the money changing hands in this transaction. It is no coincidence whatsoever that after money change hands at 34 shillings, immediately the price manipulation stops. Then we see the share price now climbing higher every single day after the transaction happened. Definitely this is not a coincidence. And in a market where we have institutions that are respectable, like the Capital Markets Authority and the Nairobi Securities Exchange, it is upon them to keep on instilling confidence in our market by investigating that kind of probable and obvious manipulation of share prices, so that we can continue to deepen our market and to give our market the dignity that it ought to have. Na hii kitu inaonyesha vizuri ya kwamba serikali walikuja wanataka kuuza share za Safaricom, na Wakenya wakatoa maoni ya kwamba ile bei ambayo serikali ili negotiate with the buyers, it was to the advantage of the buyers and it was to the detriment of us as Kenyans. Na tumeona siku tu chache kabla ya serikali kupata zile fedha, na walipata zile fedha kama kuna court case inaendelea katika our judiciary. Tunaona ya kwamba siku chache kupita sasa shares zinaenda juu za same Safaricom, kuonyesha Wakenya walijua kile waliambia serikali ya kwamba njia mwafaka ilikuwa serikali iite anyone, any international organization, any international company, including our domestic investors, wangeweka mwafaka of making people compete to buy our stake of Safaricom. Na wangeweka hiyo, inaonyesha dhahiri ya kwamba Kenya ingepata pesa mingi kuliko zile tunapata katika hii transaction. Na inaonyesha vizuri pia ya kwamba Capital Markets Authority and Nairobi Securities Exchange lazima wajibu wa Kenya, kwa sababu inaonyesha katika hii mambo ya transaction wale ambao walihusika waliweza kumanipulate the share price of Safaricom. Na ndio tuliona hata share zingine zikienda juu hapa katika soko la hisa. Tukaona ya kwamba soko la hisa na haswa za Safaricom, tukaona ya kwamba hizo zimekuwa tu zimedidimia. They must investigate the probable price manipulation of Safaricom share price for the last 8 months. Kwa sababu ni dhahiri somebody was clearly suppressing the share price. Na vile sasa imefanyika, tunaona ya kwamba share sasa inapanda. That as today in the market, Kenyans have already lost over 12 billion Kenya shillings. If you only calculate by today's Safaricom share price. Ni kuonyesha ya kwamba tungewekelea hii share na hii kampuni ya Safaricom, kila mtu angekuwa anataka kununua apewe nafasi, tungepata watu pengine wangepea wa Kenya even over 350 billion Kenya shillings. Na hiyo ni fedha ingetusaidia sisi wote kama Wakenya. All is not lost. Because if the process was wrong, even the finishing can always be annulled. Hatuwezi tuambiwa ya kwamba kwa sababu wale wamelipa ya kwamba imeisha. We cannot accept those kind of things from government. Kwa sababu inaonyesha ya kwamba the process of selling the Safaricom share price was not right, as the courts actually also upheld. And it is also clear that we undersold our most prized asset. Na hatuwezi nyamaza, na hatuwezi sema ati imeisha. All the tools on the table must work so that this transaction is annulled and a proper process that fetches the optimal amount for our country is initiated. Na hiyo ndio itatusaidia kama Wakenya, na isaidie sisi wote to get the true value of our most prized asset. Jambo ya mwisho, tunaendelea kuona, and especially in the by-election that is happening in Olkarau, that the political actors have been given a leeway to do anything, kwa sababu ni kama wao wako above the law. We are asking IEBC. Wakenya wanatazama. We don't live in Mars, we live here in Kenya. Wakenya wanatazama kile whatever is ongoing in the by-election. Na Wakenya wanachukua notes. We are all taking notes. And I want to ask this question to IEBC. Even as we proceed for the by-election next week, are the commissioners of IEBC clear-minded that whatever is happening is the right thing that should be happening? Why haven't we seen any step on the side of IEBC? Hata wakikemea mambo ambayo Wakenya wanaona dhahiri kila siku. Then it is clear IEBC waambia Wakenya that kukiwa na election, you can actually do anything to gain votes. So that political actors out here, we can know ya kwamba you can do basically anything. The kind of violence we have been seeing, it is appalling that we have not seen any action from IEBC. Tukiangalia kwa runinga tunaziona. Kama IEBC hawana TV, maybe hawako kule kwenye inafanyika, waseme tuwafanyie mchango wanunue TV, waone jioni vile Wakenya wanaona. Na waambia Wakenya if they are actually satisfied with the process. Because hata tukigoja whatever is happening next week, if the process we can already see in our eyes is fraud, how are we going to give Kenyans confidence as we head to the next general elections that Kenyans can actually go out there and give their civic duty and do their civic duty without the kind of machinations we are seeing every day? Ni vizuri wajue ya kwamba hii ambayo wanafanya ni mock exam. Na hii mock exam, the real exam is next year. And I am appalled and Kenyans are disappointed. Ni kama IEBC hawako Kenya. Wajue they are independent. Na kazi yao is not just about releasing results. Kazi yao pia ni kuonyesha Wakenya wote that the electoral process must always be peaceful, but also within the confines of what is acceptable, so that we keep on building the confidence that is required as we head to next year. Asanteni sana.
There's a question here, sir.
Yes.
On what you suspect to be market manipulation.
Yes.
On Safaricom shares. Others would argue that it is a normal market reaction. That investors had initially withheld their monies, waiting for this transaction, and of course, to see how it goes. Then after all went well, they are all back and they want back their shares. How would you respond to those? This is normal market reaction in any such block or big sale of shares of any company.
That's a very good question, Ibrahim. And it is important for me to say here that I have been in the capital markets since I was in first year in campus. So this is a field that I have enough information about. We have had many block transactions happening in our NSC. There are actually some which are happening as we talk. One is on NCBA, which we can basically see is almost finished. So the price of the market was around 105 of the market. The price in the market was around 80 up to 88. The price is still around 88 even after the transaction is almost completed. There is another transaction happening in our own NSC as we talk of EABL transaction with Asahi of Japan. That is Diageo and Asahi. Their transaction price is 590 of the market. The current transactions in the market are happening at around 258 shillings. So it therefore shows clearly that all the off-market transactions are always higher than the market price. That even after the completion of the block trades, whatever is left trading in the market always perpetually trades lower than the block trades. So the Safaricom share price, the off-market transaction, ought to have traded at a much higher price, because in the market, people place premium on the block trade. It's not a discount that is placed. It is always a premium. So in the reverse, so we are now giving our seller, our buyers, a discount. Na Ibrahim, ni vizuri tuelewe, kwa sababu saa zingine tunaongea kwa sababu sisi ni wanasiasa. People can always think tunajibizana kisiasa. Kuna mambo ambayo tunafaa tu kuona na macho, ile inahusikana na Wakenya na iko na benefit kwa nchi. This is what I mean. We sold 6 billion shares last week at 34 shillings. The people who purported to buy can sell the same shares today in our market, sell to Kenyans, and make 12 billion Kenya shillings today. That is not logical. Comparing to what has happened before, what is happening with other share prices, which have had block trades, it is clear, apparent, that at the beginning, we negotiated a low price, we undersold, but even more importantly, we continued to suppress the share price so that Kenyans don't draw these comparisons before money changed hands. And the more the reason, the market has already betrayed the same incompetence by pricing the same share at a higher price just barely a few days after money changed hands. It is apparent.
When we say that we need to retract this using whatever avenues are available, which avenues are we looking at? Given that this is a transaction that is now concluded, money has already changed hands, as you're saying.
Yes.
And the contract, the agreement was already signed at 34. So how do we reverse it? It is
when you start a process. Remember, when the money was already changing hands, there was an active judicial process. There is, even as I talk to you now, there is an appeal. If the process is seen to have been flawed, and especially through manipulation of the share price, we cannot then continue to say the conclusion is good. The end is as good as the process. And it is very clear and apparent that there was a perpetual suppression of the share price. It's not a coincidence, Ibrahim, that after money is changing hands, the share price could never go past 34 for the last 8 months. Immediately the money purports to change hands. Then we see the lid getting lifted, and now we are seeing Safaricom now behaving the same way the market has been behaving for the last 8 months. These are not coincidences. And therefore, if the process is fraud, the end is therefore also not justified.
Yes, tied to that, on 17th of next month, the High Court is expected to make a ruling on the same, whether it was flawed or it was above the board. Should the outcome favor the government of the day or the transaction, and you said you are going to use all available means, what will be the next course of action, or we wait until then we cross the river?
Remember, whatever is being said on the 17th is at the level of the Court of Appeal. There is still another judicial process remaining. And I want to hail all the Kenyans, patriotic ones, who have also volunteered to do that process. And I am happy that majority or most of the information we shared in public is actually what aided the decision making in the judiciary. And I keep repeating this, my brother Chris. Hii jambo si jambo tunafaa kuiona na macho ya kisiasa. Hii ni mali yetu kama Wakenya, ambayo ni hisa bilioni 6, ambayo Wakenya wote walisema hii bei haifai, lakini serikali wakajipiga kifua wakaendelea. Lakini pia inaonyesha dhahiri katika hiyo negotiations kulikuwa na manipulation ya share price. It's not a coincidence that immediately the money is purporting changing hands, ndio tunaona sasa the share price